Today I'm going to show you guys how to trellis tomatoes. Now there's a million different ways people trellis tomatoes, from tomato cages that you buy at the store to these big fancy trellising systems that greenhouses have. So I'm just going to go through a couple of them today. I've never done this method before, but I've seen people put in wood posts and then you put a piece of wood over top, and then they sell these clips with a roll of string on it with like a quick release, and you just string it down to your tomato and hook it on either another board a couple inches off the ground or a bamboo stake or something, and then they just clip it to their tomato as it grows up, and then when it gets up to the top, then you just quick release the roll and let it down a little bit, so it's called lower and lean. And so basically the tomato just keeps growing, but you keep lowering it and leaning it. So that's one method I've seen people use. So this is the trellis I have for the peas. They're pretty much done for, but it's just a T-post with a 1 1/4 inch PVC T on the top, and then you just run 1/2 inch conduit through it, and then I just put this mesh netting. You just get it from Johnny's Selected Seeds and hang that from it, and then the peas grow up it, but that's for peas. Another way I've seen people do tomatoes is they do the same system with the T-post, the T, and then the conduit, and then they just tie a string to this and then tie it down to a bamboo stake or whatever by your tomato, and then they just wrap the string around the tomato as it grows up. So this is the method I'm using now. This is a really good method if you're growing tomatoes out in the field. Also for in a greenhouse like this. This is just a hoop house. Eventually what I want to do is lower and lean from the greenhouse. So you just run a cable across the top, and then put hooks and then a string down and clips the tomatoes to the string, and then it's like a metal rod with a hook. They eventually just hook onto that, and then you just lower and lean and prune the tomato, and then it just kind of eventually go sideways, and then just wrap around the end, and you can have two. Anyway, it's a nice system. I'm gonna eventually do that, but today I'm just focusing on this kind of trellising. It's just T-post I didn't mind every 7 feet, and then I just use this tomato trellising twine. It's in a box, and you get like a million feet in it. It lasts forever. You get it from Johnny's Selected Seeds. I'll leave a link in the description, and it's kind of nice because it has these 2 holes here. You can connect it to your belt if you have a lot to do, and then just do what you need to do. So for the twine, I started like a foot off the ground, and you just tie it to the T-post. You go along and you weave it, go around one plant and then around the next, and then tie it to the next T-post, and then go all the way down your bed, and then come back and going around the opposite side of each tomato plant. And then you just keep adding layers every 6 inches or so, depending on your tomato plants, and just add layers as they grow. So I need to work on these tomatoes, so I'm gonna kind of show you guys how I do it. So you can see I just tied the string to the T-post, run it down, and just go down the bed like that. I have Swiss chard growing underneath these tomatoes, so hopefully our other planting will be ready soon so we can tear this out. I'm just gonna add another layer of string because they've grown, and I come out here and trellis, make sure everything's good every couple days. We're just gonna add another layer of string. So what I do is I just go 3 of these notches on the T-post. I just count 3, and then I just add another string. That's just what works for me. So we're gonna tie it up. You wanna make sure it's really tight on there because these tomatoes will get really heavy eventually. So now there's some that are still small like these, but then down there I have some taller ones because these are all different varieties. They're determinate and indeterminate varieties and everything. They're all kind of mixed up, so some of them are short, some of them are tall, some of them are bushy, so it's not really ideal, but this is just how I have it. So yeah, we're just gonna go down through. There's not really any tomatoes here to put a string on quite yet, but I'll show you guys farther down where they're taller. So I just ran the string back. Now I came back. Now I'm just going to tie it off again right here. You want to make sure it's really tight. That should work. If you have a lot of tomatoes to do, you get I don't know, maybe 24-inch long, half-inch, doesn't really matter, PVC pipe, and you just stick it down the end of your string and then tie it off. And then if you're still doing like the first or second string, then you can just use that and just kind of go in between the plants with that. That way you don't have to bend over and do it with your hand. You can just kind of use the pipe and do it that way. But I don't have very many tomatoes to do, and they're taller now, so I don't really have to use that. I just got to go back and kind of make sure I got everything right, because when you're putting up the string, kind of hard to get the leaves all perfect and stuff while you're tying up the string. So I tie up the string and then I come back and kind of make sure all the plants are where they're supposed to be. Everything looks pretty good here, so we'll just come back in another week probably, add another layer of string.
I use the same method for my peppers, just stake and weave and add more string as they grow up.
So we have these smaller tomatoes here. I'm just going to add another layer of string to them and get them all trellised now. When you're using a PVC to put the string on, it's a lot easier because you don't have to do that to wrap the string around the post. So the only reason why I have tomatoes in the beds with other things like the Swiss chard, carrots, and turnips and stuff is because I am trying to cram a lot of things in here, probably more than I should. And so I planted these things early, and then they kind of got set back a little bit, so they were supposed to be out of here by now, and then I was gonna have the tomatoes here, but we'll see how it works. Another way I've seen people trellis tomatoes, if they have like determinate varieties that are basically like bushes, they'll do the same thing, but they won't weave it. They'll just kind of have the string go on either side and kind of just hold in the bush, and it'll just be like tomato chaos inside of these two strings. I mean, it's basically the same thing, just not weaved, if that makes sense. So that was just a little bit about trellising. There's a lot more I could talk about, a lot more about pruning and all that stuff, but that's basically our setup for right now. So leave a comment what you want me to talk about in the next video, and stay tuned for more tips like this.